This episode is brought to you by the Denver Art Museum's summer exhibition, Desert Rider, Dreaming in Motion. Desert Rider explores the intersections of Indigenous, Latinx, and Chicano lowrider and skateboard culture in the American Southwest. Discover large-scale installations, photographs, and more by artists like Carlos Fresquez, Naniba Chacon, Justin Favela, and more. You can even create your own mini paper car that you can cruise down a miniature model of Federal Boulevard. The exhibition is on display now through September 24th. Learn more about Desert Rider Dreaming in Motion at denverartmuseum.org. Today on CityCast Denver, good vibes in our streets, a better look at our housing market, and a preview of Taylor Swift's stop in Denver this weekend. Me and producer Paul Caroli are talking about all the local stories that matter this week. Plus, your thoughts on cops in schools and the hottest drinks of the summer. Today is Tuesday, July 11th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about.
Good morning, Bree.
Hi, Paul.
So we're trying a new format on Tuesdays this week.
We are.
I'm so excited about it. We thought of this and we got good ideas, good plans. I think this is going to be a better show.
Thanks for sticking it out with us. Those of you listeners that have been here since 2021? 2021?
Yeah, 2021.
You've really been through it with us. 600
eps. We've never said that before, but we've done a ton of these.
Yeah, Paul, I don't know if you've done 600 of anything else, but I'm pretty sure I haven't. I don't think maybe I wrote 600 articles for Westward, actually.
Yeah.
But that was over a 10-year period.
Yeah.
That was not over a 2.5-year period of making the show 600 times, which is amazing. So all that to say, thank you.
It's a joy.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening to us as we evolve.
Well, so first up, we're going to kick things off with a vibe check because, we can all agree, vibes, the most important thing.
100%.
Period.
100%.
So what's up?
Oh, man. Over the weekend, I went to the Lowrider Show and Shine outside of the Denver Art Museum, which is this incredible festival gathering. There were lowriders lined up along the streets, and which are they're beautiful works of art that you get to see from all angles, and you can talk to the folks the artists who created them.
Could you get in there?
No, they are definitely a no-touch situation. It's like a painting. You don't touch the painting because they're delicate things, right? The headlining lowrider, I think it was called The Climax, came out from California. So friend of the show, Ben Chavez, organized this event with Damaris from Cafe Cultura, from Cultura Chocolate. I'm sorry.
Very cool. Yeah.
And so he brought this guy out who's they literally bring a trailer to put the car back. You don't drive that.
I was going to ask, yeah.
You
get dusty.
You don't drive it. And so, which is a weird thing to say about a car, but it really is about the showmanship, right?
It's art now at this point, you said.
Yeah, it's art. And so there was that happening. DJ Cones was playing amazing jams all day outside. There was food. There were I saw so many of my favorite artists who do wearable art and the Denver Made guys and my friend Alex Jimenez that runs this secondhand sort of pop-up shop called Runner Up, all these cool people I got to see in one place. And on top of that, I'll talk about this later. This was in conjunction with Desert Rider, Dreaming in Motion.
The opening of the new exhibit at the Dam.
Yes.
We've been looking forward to this.
Oh my God. Please go. If you just go see this show. I can't, I am speechless. I had to take a step back and just be in the moment. It was such a beautiful exhibition. It's so necessary. It's 50 years in the making. This is what Chicano artists and activists have been doing for the last 50 years, have culminated in bringing these artists into these spaces and institutions that historically have not been welcoming to Chicano and Indigenous artists, particularly. I could go on and on about it. It's such a beautiful show.
We'll get into it more because I think we'll be talking about this.
Yeah.
I know there's a few conversations we have been wanting to have. We're not going to get into that part.
No. But the other, I would say, okay, so going back outside the museum, something else that was cool that was happening.
Okay, I was going to ask about the Viva Streets,
Viva Streets was happening. And
no cars in the streets except for the lowriders outside the dam.
Right. So this is the juxtaposition, but also the beautiful harmony that can happen when we have conversations about pedestrian advocacy and safety, along with understanding car culture. So there are so many different types of cars, car drivers, reasons why people have cars. And lowriders are this great example of this unifying ongoing cultural movement that is related to art and people. And so I love to see these things next to each other and sort of intersect. So there was like all these lowriders, like you said, parked and people were hanging out. And then the Broadway was open to people only. And I saw it as a harmonious conversation between what I don't see often, which is the culture of cars is so much more than people that road rage and drive single occupant car drivers.
Right.
Like that's who we think of. We don't think of the people that are creating culture and community around cars. So
I love that. So the vibe this Sunday was, in one word, how would you sum it up?
it was cruising. I mean, it was just like people cruising. It was just like the cars weren't cruising themselves, but you could see, again, Desert Rider dreaming in motion. It was like, it just was a thing.
Sounds incredible.
It's how I felt. And so, yeah, I loved it.
All right. Okay. We got to move on. We got to talk about the news.
Of course.
So what are Denverites talking about this week, Brie?
This story from the Denver Post really caught my eye because it is about the thing that I think a lot of Denverites have been fretting over for the last decade and a half, which is housing cost, rent prices. So the Denver Post reported that Denver metro apartment rent inflation has outstripped income gains by a higher margin than any other major city since 2009. So what does that mean? It means from 2009 to 2021, rent growth outpaced income growth. Rents were rising, incomes were not. So you were not imagining that.
Not as fast.
Not as fast, but
Yeah.
so there's a ton of numbers in this story, and I'm not going to talk about all of them because numbers and audio is like horrific to listen to.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, so you can read it more, but it was like median rent in 2009 was at $856 a month. Okay, say that to anyone right now. Like, are you
That's crazy.
Crazy to me? That's crazy. So from $856 a month in 2009 to $1,554 in 2021. That's almost double. So all of you who have been dealing with the rents here, you're not imagining it. It's real.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. And so it just felt like validation. It felt like an unfortunate validation of what we've experienced, but it's real.
It certainly is, Brie. But it's interesting. I had a very strong reaction to this article as well when I saw this over the weekend. I think you are focusing on the housing costs, which I think most people do when they see a story like this.
It's like your biggest bill, right? It's what you think about.
100%. It's huge and it's a big problem. But what got me here is that this is the unusual housing story that put housing costs in comparison to income. And that's what actually matters in someone's life, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Because housing, like what you want to spend in order to make sure you can do all the other things you want to do, is like not too much of your income. Right. So this is also a story about Denver's incomes not rising to keep up with housing costs.
Exactly. Which doesn't seem like it benefits. I mean, I guess for landlords, cool, you can raise rents and raise rents and raise rents, but like, I don't know, there's a point at which people just can't afford to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And then everything else suffers about the city.
Yeah.
We don't have the people filling the jobs that we need, and we don't have the people living in city close neighborhoods who are doing the work that keeps the city going. And like, it just seems like a lose-lose to me.
Yeah. All of those pieces need to be there, and there need to be jobs. Right. There need to be jobs that pay well.
Right. That's no, I agree with you, Paul. This is as much a conversation, like you're saying, about incomes not getting there as much as rents just skyrocketing, mm-hmm. right?
There's a thing I saw over the weekend that we haven't talked about yet. I know you're going to have some thoughts on this, and it's definitely part of this conversation. The Mercury Cafe, new owner, Danny Newman, took over maybe 2 years ago. Yeah. I saw their workers are unionizing. Oh. They're asking for his recognition. How do you feel like that fits in the story about rents and incomes?
Rise in worker power. When workers are not getting their basic needs met, they're looking to more and more ways to consolidate their own power, because in the power structure of boss to employee, the boss always has the upper hand. And so the only way often that people in the labor world can get that power, or at least, have a seat at the table, is by banding together and asking for better pay, protections, or, better access to benefits. I mean, work hours. It can be all these things. But I hope that that conversation happens between Danny and his employees.
I do too. I think if you're feeling a pinch from rents, maybe organizing at your
Yeah,
workplace.
because we've
Would
seen
be an
it.
interesting way to make your life better.
Meow Wolf, Starbucks, King Soopers. I mean, who hasn't gone to the grocery store or gotten coffee in the last year? These
Oh my
are all
God.
things that, and then Meow Wolf is a little bit broader, but that's really also that's a whole other story about artists gaining power in a way they've never had before. So
Yeah. All right, well, let's go to a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we've got some really excellent feedback on some recent episodes. I can't wait to share.
This episode is brought to you by the Regional Air Quality Council. Hey Denver, are you tired of driving and paying for gas? Well, you're in luck. RTD and several other regional transit options are free both July and August this summer. You don't need to sign up. You won't need a ticket. You can just get on a train, get on a bus, and you're good to go. Now that is a breath of fresh air, literally, because the Front Range's biggest air quality problem is actually invisible. Created from pollutants like car exhaust that react in sunlight, ground-level ozone is a leading cause of respiratory problems. So taking the bus or light rail and biking or walking instead of driving just a couple days each week can make a big difference in our region's air quality. If you've been considering testing out a new commute or way to get around the city using the light rail or bus, July and August are the perfect time to do that. It's totally free, and you don't even need to sign up, and it improves our air quality. Learn more about how to help improve our region's air quality by visiting simplestepsbetterair.org. This episode is brought to you by the Colorado Wine Board. If you thought Colorado was just for beer lovers, think again. The Centennial State is home to over 165 wineries, which makes it easy to find a local label you love. Find urban wineries all over Denver, like Deep Roots Winery and Bistro, Carboy, Kingman Estates, and more. Plus, you can explore wineries across the Front Range and Western Slope. From Durango to Holyoke, you can make regional wine tasting a whole summer adventure. Colorado wineries have events all year long, featuring live music, tastings, special performances, and even grape stomping. Wherever your Colorado adventure takes you, you can certainly find a complex Cabernet or sparkling white to accompany you. The Colorado Wine Board offers a detailed map of all your favorite wineries, plus a calendar of can't-miss events and more. Discover your perfect wine and support local winemakers at coloradowine.com. We're back. We're talking about what you are talking about, our dear listeners. So we always want to hear from you. You can shoot us an email, denver@citycast.fm.
It's my favorite part of the show.
It is my favorite part, too. I love hearing from you all. You can also leave us a voicemail. We love voicemails.
Mm-hmm.
Call us anytime, 720-500-5418, and let us know. Maybe it was an episode we did 2 weeks ago that you've just been stewing on.
That happens to me sometimes.
Same. We are game. We want to hear from you. So something we heard a lot of feedback on was this conversation we had with School Board Director Ante Anderson about SROs, or school resource officers, being introduced back into schools. This was a long and tumultuous conversation over the course of like a year, 2 years? 3 years?
2020 was when the board voted to remove SROs right in the middle of the George Floyd protests. And then about a month ago, they voted to send them back.
Yes. And this, I think, was in light of a couple of shootings that happened at East High School in particular, but in general, school safety. So we had Director Anderson on to talk about this from a couple perspectives, right? Like one, he's a board member. He's in the room when these conversations are happening. He's part of the decision-making process. He's also probably the loudest voice from the board, the school board, about the SRO conversation, and that he was a really big supporter of removing them from schools. So them coming back into schools after that vote was why we wanted to talk to him. And a lot of you had feelings and thoughts about that conversation that we had. Mm-hmm. I guess maybe should we update like where we are exactly? Okay. Do you want to share where we are so far, Paul?
Yeah, it's not so much of an update as much as like some details about how it's going to look when police go back into schools this fall, because Superintendent Alex Marrero, he published his comprehensive school safety plan, which the board had called for after those shootings you mentioned. And this includes armed police returning to 13 large high schools where they were temporarily authorized to be already this spring. in just that short-term period when this conversation first started kicking back up again. Denverite reports that DPS is going to take a collaborative approach with DPD to develop guidelines on how those officers are going to be there. And like, I assume, everything else you might want to know about that. So there's still some stuff to be worked out. And it says that Marrero is also planning on working with the new mayor's office once Mayor-elect Mike Johnston is inaugurated next Monday, the 17th.
I'll be interested to see how that goes too, because we talk about this a lot. There's a lot of things the mayor is not in charge of, right?
Yeah.
He is not in charge of DPS, but he is the leader of our city. So I see where Superintendent Marrero is probably like, hey, let's talk to the big boss.
Yeah.
And
also,
also,
he used to be a principal. He's an education guy.
Say,
he knows this stuff. I would want to hear what he thinks.
I agree. I was going to say Mike's previous experience would make him a perfect candidate for this conversation. So, but let's hear. I want to hear from our listeners. What did our listeners have to say about this SRO's conversation, Paul?
Well, we had a few people write in with similar thoughts. I'll read one comment from a listener named Brian W. He writes, just heard your podcast with Tay Anderson, who he goes by Aonte now.
Yes.
And I think it's appropriate to use the name he chooses.
Absolutely.
As we've done. Brian W. says, where's the other side of the SRO issue? It's so, quote, controversial, but you only tell the most extreme school board member's position. 4 people on that board had another opinion, but apparently they don't count.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Call out for sure. The reason we went with Aonte, we don't often do both sides. I think that's a fair thing to say, right, Paul?
We definitely do sometimes, but not always.
Not always.
I mean, there's always more sides also.
Absolutely. This is a multi-sided conversation for sure. But if we want to talk about who is the most vocal member of the school board, there's no denying that it's Aonte Anderson.
He owned this issue.
Absolutely.
He championed this change. He made it happen. This was maybe his biggest achievement on the school board. And now he's decided he's running for higher office. We had to hear him talk about what it felt like and what the process was like. Also, we saw him on Twitter just absolutely sounding off on like the conversations with the mayor and the superintendent. Like, we needed to know, and he was ready to talk.
Yeah. So, Brian, I just want you to know that's what goes into how we decide sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes a guest falls in our lap and says, I want to talk about this thing, and we talk to them. But this happened to be the person that we saw having the biggest conversation about it, like you said, who was the biggest supporter of this massive change to DPS. So that's the reason we went the direction we went.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing that up. We appreciate it.
And I do take your point well, and I acted on it because we got another piece of feedback from someone who identifies as an educator in DPS. I won't say any more details about this person.
Yeah.
But they offered this alternate perspective. So we didn't talk to the other people on the school board, but I talked to somebody who has pretty strong feelings about SROs and felt pretty good about bringing them back, at least the vote to bring them back, and
this was
what
a
it's going to look
teacher.
like.
This is someone who deals with the implementations of the school board's decisions every day.
Yeah. So they say their frustration is with how people misunderstand schools. They say schools are a microcosm of society, which means that sometimes crimes, I mean, we don't call them crimes in schools, happen. And sometimes there's situations that arise where you might want some help from someone trained as a police officer. So it is, in their opinion, inevitable that a police officer will be at a school. Maybe you call them in, maybe they're just there and something happens. I don't know. But, that's their perspective. And those things do happen. Like, we knew when SROs weren't in schools, there were still calls going out to the police department, send an officer to this high school and come help out with this situation. That was happening. So the point this person wanted to make was, the question is not, should cops be in schools or not? It's, who do you want to be at the school? Do you want the SRO who has the relationship with the students, who's there every day, who was a woman of color, as this educator's SRO was? Or do you want the random officer who gets the call from the school and just is like on duty that day? So that's how they frame this issue. And I thought that was a pretty compelling counterpoint.
Also, if you've ever talked to an adult that doesn't talk to teenagers regularly and then they try to talk to a teenager.
Yeah.
It's like watching aliens talk to humans. Like, it's so awkward and weird. So not like, just socially, a police officer this person's argument is like someone who's in the school environment and the school culture every day has a better understanding of what the students are going through and like maybe why the situation played out with a student or why this, whatever they're dealing with happened. This police officer will have a backstory.
Yeah.
I also just want to point, I'm a graduate of DPS. I'm a graduate of a DPS high school that had police on site. And I was a high school journalist that was part of an investigative team that investigated whether we thought our police officers were doing anything.
Yeah,
in our high school in 1996, they were doing absolutely nothing. Oh. We recorded them doing nothing, a lot. So things maybe have changed quite a bit from 20 years ago, but I appreciated this perspective. I'm coming from a student perspective 20 years ago. This is a teacher that's in these buildings right now. Yeah. So they know.
Yeah.
Who else did we hear from?
We heard some really, really good feedback on our episode this past Friday where we talked about beverages with our producer, Olivia.
Yeah.
One I want to hear what you think about. This was from Twitter, a user named Denver Luna. We're not on Threads yet, by the way. I don't know if we're going to.
You know me, Paul. You know us podcaster people. I had to listen to like 6 podcast commentaries about Threads this weekend before I've decided if I'm going to get on Threads.
100 million people have signed up.
I did. That's also made me not want to be there.
Really?
I was like, I like my little weird corner, even though my weird corner is now spammed all the time on Twitter. I don't want to be in a Zuckerberg universe. I like actively try to avoid it. But anyway,
I'm undecided,
maybe we'll be on
for the
Threads.
record. Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah,
okay. We also didn't get, did you get an invite to Blue Sky? I
No.
didn't. Okay. That's all. That's another story.
That's
our tech podcast.
Different show. Anyway, a Twitter user named Denver Luna offered a comment and said, Kratom or Kratom. And so they're referencing the Westward story about the rise of kava and kratom that we talked about very briefly. They say, kratom actually saved my life from a 15-year opiate addiction. I wouldn't be here today without that substance. There's so much more to it than what was discussed. For people that can't get access to that treatment, to MAT treatment, kratom can be a lifesaver for some.
Yeah. So thank you for reaching out and sharing that perspective. I would say I was a little bit hesitant for us to touch on the kratom part of this story because we were really focused on kava. I'm kind of confused as to why these two things are also lumped together often. It might be around how they're introduced, where they're sold.
I think it might be the same active ingredient.
Really?
Yeah, or like there's something similar about the way you make it or like the materials. I obviously also don't know, and I'm glad we didn't get too far into it.
I am too, and I kind of wish we didn't touch on it at all because we don't have the backstory. What I will say is where my perspective comes from is a person who's in recovery for 17 years, also a person that walked a family member through a home detox of heroin. Opiate addiction is really serious, and harm reduction means doing things to keep yourself alive from day to day. And it sounds like for this person, kratom was that thing that helped them get out of opiate addiction. I will say I have a friend whose family member is in treatment right now for addiction to kratom. So
interesting.
I don't know enough about it. That's the one experience I was sort of going off of. So I appreciate this perspective a lot. And I would love for us to do a little bit more digging and figure out what kratom is and is Denver the place that it's going to be happening?
Let me hit you with another one. This listener texts, "Hi CityCast, longtime listener, first time texter, texting in about drink of choice. I can't drink coffee due to gut issues, and I found Rasa, a Boulder-based company, to be a great coffee alternative. Great flavor, coffee vibes, has chicory in it. I love it. I also don't drink alcohol, so if I'm out, I like to have a ginger beer with lime juice, virgin Moscow Mule."
Ugh, love that.
Great tips.
Yes. Ginger beer, good ginger beer. It's got that really spicy bite to it. Oof. Little lime juice. This is a great idea. Again, bars, take note. You can make awesome virgin drinks pretty easily. That's a great recommendation. I want to go have a ginger beer. I love it.
Ready for another one?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Josh Keene from Centennial, and you asked me to tell you what my favorite new beverage is. And I've been drinking coffee, cold brew coffee, with lemonade in it, and I am totally hooked. It started from a recommendation from the Starbucks app, say, try this, and I thought, gross. But I tried it, and the second time I tried it, it was pretty good, and I've been hooked ever since. Now I'm brewing cold brew at home, mixing in a couple fingers of lemonade, and it is great.
Our producer, Olivia, is confirming this is, in fact, a thing. But Brie, you're horrified.
It's like acid on acid. Like, yeah,
need a
that
Pepsi
sounds
after that,
so
Olivia
brutal.
says.
Thank you, listener. I don't know if I could do my coffee that dirty. I don't know if I could be that. It's cream and sugar to me. Come on. Anyway, interesting.
I can't wait to try
Let's try it.
That actually is a great segue to our last segment.
Okay.
So we wanted to end each Tuesday show with a question for you all because we want to hear more of these great opinions and learn new things from you. So if you have any thoughts or feedback on anything we've talked about, or if you have an answer to this question, leave us a voicemail or text at 720-500-5418. That number is also in the show notes. But here's the question. Brie, did you know... There's just going to be a little prelude. I have to tell a little story here. Did you know that the Taylor Swift Eras Tour is coming through Denver this weekend?
It is?
She sold out Empower Field Friday and Saturday.
That's it?
What do you mean that's it? That's 150,000 seats.
I mean, Garth Brooks does 9 days in a row. I think she's getting there.
Sheesh.
I'm not talking down to her.
I didn't expect that at all.
I'm surprised because I think folks will travel from other places because like a lot of my friends went to other shows already, not, like they got Vegas show tickets or whatever.
Right.
So
it's a huge tour.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love this for Taylor Swift. I love this for women. I do. I love this for women in music. Like she's had a hard road in terms of how critical people are of her. And like, sorry, who else is selling out 2 days at Empower Field? Not that many people.
Yeah, she's kind of crushing it.
So what's your question, Paul?
Well, my question is based on a supposition because I noticed that, well, 2 things. One, John Mayer played with Dead & Co. in Boulder 2 weeks ago. John Mayer, well known to be a former boyfriend of Taylor Swift.
Hey, you know what? It's all copy, whatever they say. Whatever Nora Ephron said, your whole life is copy. He was a part of her story.
He was. And she just recently re-released her album with the song about him on it. So she was addressing this. He was in Boulder. She's going to be in Denver. Maybe she comes a little early. Maybe he stays a little late. Maybe they meet for dinner. I could see them reconciling, having a conversation. Here's my question. Where would you expect to see Taylor Swift and John Mayer get dinner in Denver this weekend?
I'm ignoring the fact that you don't understand how tour schedules work.
Oh, does this not at all possible?
But, okay, Taylor Lautner, producer
Olivia is giving some information that's
really
important.
The person
Taylor Lautner apparently showed up to Taylor's Kansas City show. He was addressed on the album that came out around then.
But he's an actor, right?
He's not busy. You're saying John might be busy.
John might be. I don't know if he's on a tour or if he was just doing a one-off, but Taylor's definitely not hanging around. She's on a tour, so she's got a tour schedule.
I think he would accommodate her.
I mean,
where would they go to dinner? City O City?
It's going to be fancier than City O City. Where's Peyton? I need Peyton.
Tavernetta?
Yeah, I was like, whatever. Frasca, that's what I was like. What's the most fanciest?
I could see them in Frasca.
Or somewhere like Sushi Den where you might be able to have a little quiet area. I mean, wherever Taylor is eating dinner, they're probably renting out the whole restaurant.
Probably.
Because she wouldn't be able to like function. No one would leave her alone. You know what I mean? Like she's probably the top 10 most famous people in the world in 2023, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but I would say Sushi Den. That would be my. But I don't know if she likes sushi. Oh my God, Tate! All you Swifties out there, I'm so sorry. My best friend Robin's a Swiftie. I should just ask her. She would know.
Ask her, and we'll get her take. And if you want to weigh in on the question
make her call in.
You can text or leave us a voicemail with your name and neighborhood and your restaurant pick for Taylor and John at the Taylor Swift Eras Tour hotline. It's 720-500-5418. Again, that's 720-500-5418.
Oh, I want to hear from our Swifties in Colorado.
Absolutely.
I'm so curious. I really am.
I
love devoted music fans. I don't care what you're into. If you're into music that hard, I respect you. Any recommendations from our Swifties out there? Where do I start? I'm a Taylor Swift noob. What album do I begin with? I feel like Olivia's in the corner, like thinking about it.
I'm going to think on that one too. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. Okay.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks for this little chat, Paul.
Yeah, you too, Brie. See ya.
See ya. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Taylor Swift about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, by texting Denver to 66866. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye.
I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. Yeah, I was listening to that new album all weekend. It's great.